So welcome to this latest video 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths higher topic of ratio proportion with a focus of coordinates. Now a copy of the topic test that we go through in this video is available for you to download and have an attempt at before watching through this video, so you can see how much you know, and all you need to do to access that is just click on the link in the description. Now, working through recently quite a lot of past GCSE papers, one thing that I am noticing is an intense increase of ratio and proportion questions, not only as in there within their own unique topic, but also being amalgamated in all the other aspects of maths. And one in particular is working with coordinates and coordinate geometry. So hopefully working through these questions should make you a little bit more confident with working and combining coordinates with ratio and proportion. Now, just a reminder, if you're wanting a copy of the questions that we go through this test, all you need to do is simply click on the link in the description below. So looking at question 1, it says ABCD is a square, A is 2, 3, B is 8, 3, and C is 8, 9. Write down the coordinates of D. Now in this particular question, it is only worth 1 mark, so it should be relatively quite quick. But also, if you are struggling to get to grips with this, then do not be afraid of simply drawing a mock set of axes and then just plotting where you think certain points would be. So for example, if this point here is A, then that's going to be 2 and this is going to be 3. B is going to be 8, 3, so 8 is on this side of the right and 3 up, so that's going to be B, so that's 8, 3. C is 8, 9, so that's going to be along there and that's going to be 9 and that's C. So you would expect D to be here, and that coordinate there is 2, 9. Now another way of doing that without having to draw a diagram is to recognize that if it is a square, then 2 coordinates should have the same x ordinates and 2 coordinates should have the same y ordinates. So here we've got our 2 y ordinates, and then it's just a case of seeing which one is the odd one out. So I've got 2 x ordinates, so the other coordinate D must have a coordinate of 2, and I'm missing that 9, so it must be a 9 there. Moving on to question 2, it says A is 0, 2, B is 4, 0. Find the midpoint of AB. Well, now there is a formula for the midpoint of 2 coordinates, and that is x2 plus x1, or x1 plus x2. We'll go for that one instead, divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So here, another way of looking at it is you add the 2 x ordinates, that becomes 0 plus 4 divided by 2, add the 2 y ordinates, which is 2 plus 0 divided by 2, so that becomes 2 and that becomes 1. And then says for B, P is 2, 1 and Q is 5, 8. Find the midpoint between these two. Well, again, if I add together 2 x ordinates, that's 2 plus 5 divided by 2, which is 3.5. And then if I add the 2 x ordinates, 1 plus 9 divided by 2, which equals 5. So the answer then is 3.5 and 5. Then moving on to question 3, it says M is the midpoint of AB. Work out the values of A and B. So let's first of all, with this diagram, mark that here we've got 5, and this point here is 6. Now looking at the coordinates we know, well, we know that B has got x ordinate of 7. So that is 7, which means that this distance here is going to be 2. So that means that this distance here, because M is the midpoint, that's also going to be 2. So 5 take away 2 gives me 3. So A equals 3. And then to work out B, well, the y ordinate of A is 2. So that means that the distance between these two is going to be 4. So then if I add 4 to 6, that gives me 10. So then B equals 10. So A equals 3 and B equals 10. Then moving on to question 4, it says P is 2 minus 1, Q is 10, 23. Point Q divides PR in the ratio of 1 to 3. Work out the coordinates of Q. So looking at this, if we look at the distance of P. So again, if you wanted to, you could do a little sketch just to get your head around what this is. So 2 minus 1, we're just going to say is there. So let me just label this up as 2 minus 1, and that's point P. And Q is 10, 23, so just imagine 10 is here and 23 is up there. So let's just put that as Q, and that's 23, and that's 10. So looking at this, we want to split this in the ratio, or Q is in the ratio of 1 to 3. So if I look at this distance here, which if I draw a triangle, has got a triangle of difference between 10 and 2 is 8, and the difference between -1 and 23 is 24. So then what I then want to do is we know that Q is in the ratio of 1 to 3. So if I look at the line of PQ and I split that into quarters, then point Q is going to be here. So it's 1/4 of the points. So it's going to be here. This is what I need to find. So looking at this, well, we know that P to Q is going to be 1/4, and Q to R is going to be 3/4. So then to look at the dimensions, if I then do 8 times 1/4, that gives me 2. So that means that in this triangle here, let me use a colour that I've not used, which I'm struggling. Let's go for purple. So this length here is going to be 2. So the coordinates, the x-ordinate of Q is going to be from 2 going across 2. So that's going to be 4. And then looking at the height of that, well, the general height is 24. So if I then do 24 times 1/4, I get an answer of 6. So the height of this little triangle is going to be 6. So if it starts at -1, -1 plus 6 is going to give me 5. So then the coordinate of Q is going to be 4, 5. Now moving on to question 5, it says that ABCD is a rectangle of area 10 square units. A is 4, 5 and B is 9, 5. Give two possible pairs of the coordinates for CD. So if I start by using BC as one of the sides of a rectangle, then it's either going to look something like this, in which this point here I'm just going to assume is C1 and this one I'll call D1, or it could be below that AB, in which this would be C2 and this point here would be D2. Now one of the key facts that it tells me within the question that the area of the rectangle is 10 square units. So 10 square units just basically doesn't mean in terms of like it's a square, so try not to get confused. It's just a case so we don't know what the dimensions and the units are used for that length, which is why they just call it square units. So here to work out the area of a rectangle, it's the length times the height, which we know in this particular question is 10. So that means that H must be 2. So the distance of this must be 2, or the distance going down must also be 2. Now looking at the coordinates of B, now C will have the same x ordinates as B, so that will also be 9, but the y ordinate is going to be 2 up, so that's going to be 5 plus 2, which is 7. So C1 is going to equal 9, 7, and D1, which is directly above A, so we have the same x ordinate, but again the y ordinate will be plus 2, so that would be 5 plus 2, which is 7. So D would be at 4, 7. Then for the second coordinates for C, again C1 will have the same, C2 will have the same x ordinate, so that's still going to be at 9, but the y ordinate is going to be 2 down from 5, so that's going to be 5 take away 2, which is 3. And D2 is therefore going to have the same x ordinate as A, which is 4, but the y ordinate is going to be 2 less than 5, which is going to be 3. So then my two sets of coordinates are 9, 7 and 4, 7 and 9, 3 and 4, 3. Then moving on to question 6, it says that A is at 4, 1, B is at 3, 1 and the points are in a straight line of A, B, C, D. It tells us that AB is equal to BC, which is equal to CD, and it says work out the coordinates of D. Now for this particular question, what we need to do is draw triangles. Now using the coordinates, I can then work out the dimensions of that triangle, because the height of that is going to be the difference in the y ordinates. So 4 take away 1 is 3. And the base of that triangle is going to be the difference in the x ordinates, which is 2. So that triangle there is 3, 2. So then if I then do 3 down, which will give me minus 2, and then the y ordinate is going to be 2 across, so 3 plus 2 is 5, so that's going to be 5, 2. Then if I then do the same, so I'm going down 3 and across 2, so across 2 will mean that this coordinate here is now 7, and the y ordinate is going to go down 3 from minus 2, which is going to be minus 5, so the coordinate of D is going to be 7 minus 5. Now for the 3 marks, it's really important that you do work out the coordinates of C and the coordinates of D. Then moving on to question 7, it says that A, B and C are points on the axes as shown. The area of triangle ABC is 25 square units. Work out possible coordinates of A, B and C. Now for this, there are going to be quite a few numbers of answers we can have. So let me just show you how to get each of those answers. So if I start by just drawing that triangle of ABCD, or ABC rather, then we know that the area of a triangle is base times the height divided by 2, which in this case gives me 25. So that means that the base times the height, let me just make that B look a bit better, is going to equal 50. So I want two numbers that multiply together to give me 50. Now for this, we know that the height has got to be, so this here is the height and this here is the base. Now what you want to do is just pick two numbers that multiply to give you 50, and so let's just go for the most common one, which is 25 and 2. Okay, so from this what you could do is decide, do I want the height to be 25 or the base to be 25, and it's entirely up to you which one you want to go for. But basically in terms of A and B, that you want the distance, we want the x ordinates, or the difference in the x ordinates of A and B multiplied by the y ordinate of C to be 50. So for example, and you also need to make sure that A and B have got y ordinates of 0. So if I just write down A as being A0 and B is B0 and C is going to be 0C, then the difference B minus A, let's just say for arguments, multiplied by C, as need to add up to 50. And all you need to do is just make up numbers that fit this category, but remember that A needs to be a negative number. So here if I then had, let's say 5, and so that would mean that minus 5, so B would need to be 25 plus that, so that would be 20. So that then gives me a distance of 25, and the height needs to be 2. So potential coordinates could be that A is going to be minus 5, 0, B is 20, 0, and C is going to be 0, 2. And again, that would be one example of where it would give me the correct answer. Moving on to question 8, it says PQ, RS and T are points on a straight line. PQ, RS are equally spaced and RS to ST is in the ratio of 1 to 2. And the question is saying work out the coordinates of point T. So we know that these 4 points are all equally spaced. So again, if I go back to drawing my triangle, then looking at the base of that triangle, it's the difference between the x ordinates, that's 10, and the height of that triangle is the difference of the y ordinates, which is 4. So that means that this will be 10, this will be 4. Now one way that you might find easier is actually marking it on the axes. So this is 2, 3. This point here is 12, and that point there is 7. And if I just mark those 4 points, you can then see that if the y ordinates are going up in 4, this is going to be 11 and this is going to be 15. And if the x ordinates are going up in 10s, then that's going to be 22, and this point here is going to be 32. So again, labeling the points, R is going to be at 22, 11. S is going to be at 32, 15. Now the only one that's different is the triangle of S to T. Now the triangle of S to T is twice the size of the angle of the triangle of S, R to S. So if this purple triangle has got a base of 10 and 4, then the triangle from S to C is going to be twice the size, so it's going to be 20 and it's going to be 8. So if if S has got a coordinate of 32 and 15, then T, in terms of the ordinates, well, the x ordinate is going to have a difference of 20, so that's plus 20, and the y ordinate is going to have a height difference of 8, and that'll be 52 if the pen works, which it doesn't, and 15 plus 8, which is 23. Then moving on to question 9, it says JKLM is a rhombus, J is at -1, -3, and K is 2, 1. Work out possible pair of coordinates for L and M. So again, if I just pick a particular point, and let's just call this J, and that is at -1, -3. Now, because obviously looking at the scale, if I just do a set of axes there, which is going to be pretty poor, but let's just say that argument's sake that's there, then K is going to be somewhere here, which is at 2, 1. So if I just mark these here, so that's -1, this is at 2, this is at 1, and this is at -3. So then looking at the triangle based on these two points here, that triangle there has got a height of the difference between the y ordinates is 4 and the difference between the x ordinates is 3. So then if I'm drawing a rhombus, then if I just repeat that rhombus of 4, 3, so then what I've then got is something that looks like this. Now this point here is going to be L and this point here is going to be M. Now if I just go over that point there, which is -3, so again looking at the difference between J and K, that the height of those is the difference between the y ordinates, which is 4. So M, starting at -3, going down 4, is going to have a y ordinate of -7. Now the x ordinate is going to be the same as K, so that's going to be 2 minus 7. And then for L, well, that's going to have the same y ordinate as J, which is -3. But the base of that triangle, which is 3 from 2, is going to be 5. So then a possible answer is L equals 5 minus 3 and M equals 2 minus 7. Now, other possible answers you can have for L and M, I'll just write them down. So you can have L equals -1, 5, and M equals -4, 1. You can have L is what I've written there. You can have -3, 1, and M is -6, -3. And you can also have L as 7, 1, and M as 4, -3. So Any sets of those answers would be absolutely fine to get the full marks. Then moving on to our last question, question 10, it says that A is at -2, 3, B is at 1, -1 are points on a straight line of ABC. AB to BC is in the ratio of 2 to 3. Work out the coordinates of point C. So again, if I draw my triangle and I work out the dimensions of this triangle, so again, looking at the difference in the x ordinates is going to be the base, so that's going to be 3. And the difference between the y ordinates is 4. Now this triangle, if I divide by 2, so to work out BC, it's going to be AB divided by 2 times 3. So then the height of this triangle, so if I've got 4, 3, then if I'm then multiplying that or dividing it by 2, multiplying by 3, so 4 divided by 2 is 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, and 1.5 times 3 is 4.5. So that's the dimensions of this triangle here. So this is going to have a height of 6, and this length here is going to be 4.5. So then if I mark what the coordinates are, so this point here is -1 and this point here is +1. So then that means that this point here is going to be 1 plus 4.5, which is 5.5, and this point here is going to be 6 down from -1, which is -7. So C is going to have a coordinate of 5.5 and -7.